All right, welcome everyone. This is the Speed Traveler Roadshow where we talk cars. I'm Charlie Frank, joined by Chris Evertsen, one of the other Speed Travelers. And Chris, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about some race cars and some other stuff, maybe Las Vegas F1.
Yeah, well, Las Vegas F1 is going to be a hot topic, so I think we should jump right into that. Ultimately, I feel like the race was incredible, but there's a lot of other stuff that was not.
Yeah, we're also joined in the studio. For those of you listening podcast, the date range may be a little off, but we're recording this the day before Thanksgiving. So we've got the whole family in the studio today, and everyone's going to contribute today. We've got brother-in-law Pete, we've got nephew Matthew, and we've got Kelly Frank. And Kelly, we're going to talk a little news. And you also were at the F1 race last weekend. What were your thoughts?
Oh my goodness, that was a crazy race. It started out very rocky. We got to see about 8 minutes of free practice one, and then we immediately had to leave because they were saying, oh, well, we might just let you guys watch the second practice, but they weren't sure. And of course, actually, fans got sent home at 2 a.m., and people were furious. We actually ended up watching qualifying from the hotel room.
Yeah, that wasn't bad. But no, Chris, you were there as well. And F1 spent a lot of money on this event. And, what are your quick thoughts on that?
Well, to add to what Kelly was just saying, they made everybody leave. And it's the why they made everybody leave that has me a little bit irritated. One, they waited till moments before the second practice session to kick everybody out, and they waited on practice 2 to make sure everyone was kicked out before they started it. And they basically kicked everyone out because they didn't have the staff to be able to man all the ticketing centers, and they didn't have all the security folks to be able to manage that, and they didn't have a food system in place for the staff as well. So the volunteer staff and the paid staff really got, beat over by F1. And then as a result of them getting beat over, so did the fans. There are fans out there partying till 2 a.m. waiting to watch the race, and they're saying, sorry, Auf Wiedersehen. So F1 really blew the pooch on that. I get the track issue. I'll give the track issue, a little bit of leeway, but the way the fans were treated subsequently was absolutely just devastatingly rude.
Yeah, no, it was bad. We were all there, and there was a lot of other issues as we got to the F1 sent us a drop-off location for Uber and rideshare. And we got there, we walked a half mile to the gate, and then the people at the gate were like, oh, sorry, you can't come in here.
It was the wrong entrance. Yeah. They literally emailed us the wrong entrance. So we had to walk 7 miles.
Oh, yeah. And so we had to turn around and walk to another entrance. And sadly, the second entrance where we had tickets to was only 500 feet away, but they didn't add a pedestrian bridge. It's just the weirdest thing. If they had added a pedestrian bridge, it would have saved us a 4-mile walk around from one side of the track to the other. And I just don't understand. F1 spent so much money. And, we don't like beating up on F1 because we want to work with them more. But I don't know, Chris, I just don't know why they didn't bring in an expert to really try and smooth all these things over and identify problems.
Well, it's not like they've never done this before as well. There is history. Manhole covers have been issues in races previously. You think for a first-time event, they would do a lot more due diligence in checking the manhole covers. That's just on the track side of things. Then as far as the fan access, you're absolutely right. It was garbage. The F1 app was absolute garbage, sent people to the wrong places. There was very little access points to get to the track. Especially if you're going from one side of the track to the other side of the track. It just, logistically, that was a nightmare. A simple crossover bridge would have solved a lot of problems. And then once you're inside the facility, you could see where you need to go 10 feet away, but you had to walk a mile to get 10 feet away on the other side of a fence. It was just a mess.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
To add a little bit more insult to injury to the whole Thursday night, the initial experience. We haven't even gotten past Thursday night. To add a little bit more insult to injury, there's a class action suit that was levied, which is, it's going to be at least $30,000 in damages. ooh, what a dent to the F1 bank account.
Yeah, right.
And then the other side of that coin is I just learned that race officials were offering $200 discounts at the official gift shops, F1 gift shops, for fans that held a Thursday night ticket. And I'm just learning of that now.
Yeah.
I would have loved that $200 gift card to an F1 shop. I would have used it all.
Yeah,
and I'm just finding out about it now on a new article written by Forbes magazine.
We could have used it on Friday when we were there, Friday or Saturday. Yeah. So yeah, and just to add to it, for those of you who weren't at the F1 race, as you mentioned, there was an entrance. It was dark. The staff, the volunteer staff, they were really nice people, but they weren't trained well, so they had no idea where to go. And it was dark, and we were walking down this street, and there were shuttle buses buzzing in and out of the complex in between the people that were walking down this dark street going towards the entry. And then when we got to the entry, there was the staff, let's just say they weren't the best and the brightest of Las Vegas, and they weren't letting people in that had bags. So anyone who had a bag on them that was bigger than half a piece of paper was told they couldn't come in, and they didn't have any lockers. So basically, like, you go to the USC.
Bag, though, I want to clarify that. That bag meant every woman with a purse, every
exactly.
man with a purse.
Yes.
And it was even a small clutch, was said, nope, you can't come in with that bag, which, I mean, at every other sporting event in the world, and this includes Raider games where they got to look for guns on a regular basis. Every NFL game, they look in the bag, they identify if there's anything dangerous in there, and they say, okay, you're good to go, and let you in.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why that was such a big difference for this Formula One event in a country that produces events like this all the time.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like a first-time amateur event, and like you said, this is F1. We're not talking about the local circus, so they should have had their stuff together. We were stopped at the gate because Catherine, who was with us, had a purse. They wouldn't let her in, and they literally told her with a straight face to go walk back to the hotel, which is about 7 miles away, and drop it off, and they had no answer. So we walked inside the gate. There was a group of about 12 Brazilian women just freaking out because they all had fancy bags.
Yeah, their bags were thousands of dollars, and they were going to make them either. They also said, oh, well, maybe they can keep it at like the Treasure Island.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no.
And so there was a group of angry people. And then once we noticed the security guard turned his back, then we all made a break for it, and then they never caught us. So, but we're not condoning that behavior. But you know what?
Yes, we are. In this instance, I am absolutely condoning that behavior.
Yeah, no, they did not do a good job. They need to get the message out for anyone who was there on Thursday night. For some reason, it's Thursday night only. So you bought a one-night ticket on Thursday for the race. You are entitled to a $200 gift card that's good for the online store. So everyone out there that attended and got shut down. And to add insult to injury, as you said, they kicked everyone out at 2 a.m. At 2:15, they put cars on the track. So as you were walking down a dark street, avoiding buses, you could hear the cars in the background. I mean, that was really bad.
Maddening. Absolutely maddening.
But with that said, this is a happy show. We talk about cars. We talk about classic cars. And we've got cousin Matt here. Matt, how was the experience since you watched it all on TV? How was the racing experience at home watching on TV?
Yeah, it was awesome. I remember I was texting you. I was trying to give you updates, which I thought was funny because you're like, what is going on? And I'm sitting there kind of relaying the message. But no, it was great. Just seeing the whole strip and the sphere was like unbelievable. Although it was only 8 minutes on FP1. So that was cool. I did stay up and watched the rest, but the race itself was unbelievable. And that experience of just seeing the cars flying down the strip, it was very cool to see.
Yeah, so. And Chris, it's like a tale of two cities. Like as Matt's saying, we ended up not staying for Saturday. We watched on TV Saturday night, and it was a great race Saturday night on TV.
It really was a great race. The track proved to be more challenging than I think the drivers initially expected. Everyone seemed to think it was an easy track, and I think the track was actually a lot more challenging, especially since it was so wide in some spots. So from a driver's standpoint, it was a challenging track, and from a fan standpoint, it just led to so much passing that it was super exciting. I mean, Max Verstappen said it was 99% show, 1% race. Well, that 1% race was pretty flipping good.
Yeah, and Max took his 18th win of the season, which is unbelievable. So Max is on a tear. I mean, no one's won 8. I mean, this is the longest season in history, I think, 23 races. But still, 18 races in a year, unbelievable.
Yeah, the Red Bull dominance is unbelievable. Now, granted, Max and the Red Bull team were assisted with a late red flag that really kind of cost Charles Leclerc, I think, the win overall, because he was sitting pretty in first place. Max Verstappen, because of his second pit stop, was pretty far back in the pack, about 8 cars back. That red flag, full course yellow, I should say, flag, really worked into a lot of the back markers' favor, and Max Verstappen was able to dip into the pits for some fresh sticky tires. Charles Leclerc ended up staying out on track because track position is usually king, and it just allowed Max Verstappen to hunt down the Ferrari and put the pass on him for the win. But then the battle for second place became really, really challenging between Checo Perez and Charles Leclerc. And it was pretty exciting to watch all the good passing, not only at the front of the race, which is kind of a first this year, but also in the mid-pack.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. I can't believe, I was just talking to Matt about it this morning. I can't believe Checo on the last lap left the door open for Leclerc.
Yeah, that was absolutely wild. Like, and it was almost like you didn't even see him.
Yeah,
he's flying down. I think turn 18?
Matthew.
What was that?
I don't know that he necessarily tracked him in that position. I think Checo also was more interested in solidifying second place in the championship point standings, which he did do with that third place finish.
So that would make some sense.
Kind of stunning.
He didn't fight it too bad. But we are going to come back and talk a little more. We're going to review the F1 race in Vegas a little more, and we're going to preview this weekend's final race, Chris, at Abu Dhabi when we come back. So if you're listening to us on a podcast and you don't want to hear about our political rant on government-mandated EVs, and you also don't want to hear about what cars we see as going up in value, you can fast forward to the last block now, and you can hear what we're going to talk about F1. Otherwise, this is the Speed Traveler Roadshow. You're listening to us on KHTS Radio, AM 1220 and FM 98.1. You can also catch all of our shows at the Speed Traveler on YouTube. So if you're in the market for a classic car, you can go back to our YouTube pages and go through the videos. And we've done videos on Porsche, on classic BMWs, on classic Corvettes. So a great resource. We'll be right back after this message, and we're going to talk a little bit of government-mandated EVs. All right, welcome back to the Speed Traveler Roadshow, coming to you from the KHTS studio in Newhall, California, AM 1220 and FM 98.1. You can also find us anywhere you get your podcasts. And there's a way, Chris, I hear there's a way, or actually, Kelly, this is probably a question for you, someone from the young generation, is there's a way to be alerted when a new podcast downloads, right? You have to subscribe.
Yeah, of course. You can always get your alerts on Spotify, on Apple Music. It was pretty crazy because we ran into someone who had been listening to you guys on Spotify.
Yeah, that was
the F1
crazy.
Race.
Yeah, that's right. Our buddy Cooper.
Yeah.
And we might have Cooper on in a future episode. But Chris, we're going to talk a little bit now about government mandated EVs. We don't like to get too political on this show because it's about...
Nothing makes me happier than knowing I have to buy a $90,000 electric car and plug it into my outlet next to my dishwasher. And,
You mean your all electric gas range and dishwasher?
Exactly.
But we scratched the I guess the edge of something that went crazy, right? What I was going to say is we kind of bumped
the scab.
Yeah, we bumped the beehive and people went crazy. We started talking about government mandated EVs, electric vehicles. And this show is about fun and about going places in your car and about making money off your car and about F1. But we brought up government mandated EVs and people started going crazy. So it's amazing. You just scratched.
Said fun, and this is absolutely hilarious to me.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, to jump right into it, now New Jersey of all states,
Right.
Yes. Says that by 2020 or 2035, every car has to be an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
What the heck? And heck is a very, very filtered word for me right now. What the heck is that all about?
Yeah, and what's worse is it says 2035 electric. It doesn't say alternative fuel or air-powered car or there's all sorts of different options out there. The fact that it says electric is just galling, right?
Yeah, I mean it's very, very specific. What entities are ramming, and we can talk a lot about this. What entities are ramming this electric car industry down our flippin' throats?
Yeah.
I mean, we are being force-fed like a goose for pate, this electric car mandate.
Yeah, it's funny. It's so weird that you bring that up because, it's been going for a few years. And I think social media has been all on board on electric cars. Of course, China is all on board in electric cars because they're making most of the batteries. Yeah, and they beat everyone to the punch on the making of those batteries. So they're on board. All the politicians are on board because they're stuffing their pockets with EV money. But it's just been the last few months that people are kind of taking a step back and saying, what? Why in the world is the government telling me I have to buy an electric car?
Yeah, it's crazy. And what are Shell Oil and all the big manufacturers in big oil, thinking about this? I mean, what's their plan in response to this? I get it. We need to adapt our energy sources and our energy supplies. Coal and oil. These are things we've learned are not the cleanest, but we've learned how to clean oil up dramatically. And we've learned that battery technology is not a clean resource product. You mentioned air power, and we've talked about
ammonia.
Ammonia power and a host of others. I mean, I feel like in this current climate that a hybrid system makes a lot of sense, especially since brands like Formula One and Le Mans, the LMP1 cars are all hybrid powered vehicles.
Yeah.
Why are we not looking more at something along the lines of hybrid technology, which we already have a foothold in and can improve upon dramatically, instead of just being force-fed this electric mandate?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. I lean center right, you lean center left. But if you're a car guy, they're coming for you and they're going to want to take your car. And, I like driving my car random places. I don't need to have a point A to point B. And that's kind of like what the government's shoving down our throats.
Yeah, it's like telling you can only ride your bicycle if you're commuting from work and back, but you can't go out and have fun on a mountain bike trail or something like that. Whatever your mode of pleasure is, you can only surf waves if you are generating electricity to power a battery, but you cannot surf waves for fun.
Yeah, and just to fuel the fire a little bit, I'm going to give you a little data right now. That is 50 to 70% of the cobalt that's used for the electric car batteries comes from the Democratic, I love that it's the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which has absolutely zero human rights laws whatsoever. They got 12-year-old kids in these mines working 14 hours a day. Where's the outrage from Greta, whatever her name is, on that?
Right.
And
Matthew, I mean, as a young man and Kelly as a young woman, what does this mean to you?
I mean, I think it's pretty crazy because my whole generation, we're growing up now with all the Teslas and everybody's all about the EVs, and nobody's actually looking into these EVs. Like, nobody's actually considered, maybe this couldn't be the best thing for human rights. And everyone's all about human rights now, so they should probably look into that if they're going to be posting all their pictures in the Teslas.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's it going to do to the farming industry? Every single combine and tractor and bulldozer is a diesel engine. What's it going to do to those industries? And what's that going to do to the cost of produce at your local produce market?
And then Matt,
grocery store.
What'd you want to add, Matt?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add, I work a lot on the beach, and it starts at such a young age with these electric bikes now.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because you look at like the date 2035. So these kids that are now on all these electric bikes are like, oh, yay, now we get to go with the EVs as soon as they get their driver's license. So you can almost see the writing on the wall through that. But for me, I think it's ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous. Like what happens when the power goes out?
Yeah.
Couple years ago, we had that huge blackout down in San Diego where everybody is, all the credit card machines were down and we all sat around like it was the old days.
Yeah,
so.
and how vulnerable would we be to an enemy of the country
absolutely.
if they figured out how to take our power down? Then no one can drive anywhere, and we're basically held captive until they turn our power back on. But yeah, I mean, a few more stats.
Right now we have a bit of a heat wave. We're having our Thanksgiving heat wave. It's 80 degrees here out on the West Coast. And, this is a time of year when energy production is at its highest, and we could have rolling brownouts. I mean, brownouts are a thing that we see in Southern California, and I think you see them on the East Coast a lot as well. And how are these rolling brownouts going to affect people's ability to travel via electric mobility?
That's a terrible term, by the way. Can't they come up with a better term than brownout?
Brownouts, yeah.
But I'm going to lay a few more stats on you. I mean, this is the holidays, so no time better to pick an argument with your family members. This show is going to come on after Thanksgiving, but you got plenty of time for Hanukkah and Christmas to pick a fight. So I'm going to lay a few more stats on you. So most of the cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where 12-year-old boys are working 12 or 14 hours a day to mine it. No one's talking about that. It takes 500,000 pounds of dirt to make 1,000-pound EV battery. So in the calculations on how green electric cars are, they're not counting the 5,000 pounds of dirt 500,000 pounds, 500,000 pounds of dirt to make 1,000-pound battery. They're not counting the exhaust that's coming from that tractor. So there's another factor for you. Then they're taking all these raw materials and they're putting it on the most polluting vehicle in the world, which is a tanker ship. And that's polluting its way all the way to China. Then they're unloading it. Then there's no human rights or very few environmental issues in China. So they're making these batteries, polluting the air there. Then they're putting the battery back on another polluting tanker ship and shipping it to the U.S. And then that's when they start their calculations on how green the car is. So, there you go. Now you got plenty of fodder to pick a fight with someone at family dinner.
Perfect. I've got my gloves on. I'm ready to go.
All right. We are going to take a break with that nice end. This is the Speed Traveler Roadshow on KHTS Radio. You can also check us out at hometownstation.com. Excuse me, losing my breath there, but we are going to come back and we are going to talk a little bit about some races we've been to in the past, Chris, and some ways you can make money from the car industry. We'll be right back. All right. Welcome back to the Speed Traveler Roadshow, where we discuss cars and we discuss racing and we discuss ways that you can make money off cars. I am joined by Chris Evertsen, my co-host. I am Charlie Frank. And Chris, in this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about ways you can make money off of a classic car, or in this case, we're going to talk about buying old race cars.
Yeah, and it's amazing what some folks like our good buddy Adam Carolla has done. People mocked him for doing what he's been doing, but who's got the last laugh now? And it's Adam Carolla for his genius purchasing.
Yeah, so Adam Carolla, for those of you who don't know, one of the most famous podcasters in the world, also the host of probably the greatest television show in the history of man, which was called The Man Show. But he loves Paul Newman, and he has been going around buying Paul Newman's old race cars. And he bought Paul Newman's 1979 class-winning Porsche 935. Great car, Chris. You remember it has like the red car with Hawaiian tropic livery?
It was just an amazing car. I mean, a lot longer than any Porsche you've ever seen in your life from that era. You think it's kind of the 935, kind of looks a little bit like the 911, but with all this extra whale tail. I mean, that whale tail is just unbelievable.
Oh, it really was. And the car itself, when you're looking for race cars, particularly to buy, you want something that has some history. So this had great history. It was driven by Paul Newman at Le Mans. He led 23 hours of the race, and then they ended up having overall, and then they ended up having a minor part fail in the last hour. So they ended up coming in second. They actually lost to the Whittington brothers. We're going to do a show about all the drug dealers that were in IMSA and Le Mans and sports car racing. We're going to do another show on that.
A long show.
It's going to be a long show, but to sum it up, the Whittington brothers were infamous for running a drug operation, and then they were sinking their money into racing. And they like these guys came from nowhere, and all of a sudden they're winning the most famous races in the world.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, there's so much in the storyline on the Whittington brothers, that we have to dedicate an entire episode or two to just the Whittington brothers.
We do.
But then there's John Paul and everybody else that's done exactly the same thing.
Yep.
But,
Getting back to the Porsche, so Adam Carolla purchased a Porsche 935 at an auction. I think it was at Pebble Beach about maybe 7 or 8 years ago for $4.4 million. Apparently he didn't have all the money himself, so he borrowed some money from buddies. And everyone was laughing, and now the car's worth probably $12 million. And so he didn't do too bad for himself.
300%, 400% return on investment there is pretty nice.
Yeah, and then also our buddy Bruce Meyer, who is the curator and the starter of the Peterson Auto Museum, he has the Whittington brothers Porsche 935 from that year, and that's pretty crazy that his car is worth at least $12 million also.
And that's excluding the cocaine that was stuffed into the roll cage.
Yeah. Actually, brother-in-law Pete's here. This is Thanksgiving week, so we've had a lot of fun, with the family here. I just love cleaning the house for the last 2 days. So. but Pete's here, and Pete, you actually took us to a lot of the races at Riverside and Laguna Seca over the years.
Yeah, we're lucky because we really experienced Laguna Seca in its glory days. One of the famous road courses in the United States, and it was really a pleasure to see David Hobbs doing the BMW.
Oh yeah!
In those days, you had the Whittington brothers, you had Danny and Gaius with the famous black Porsches.
Right, Interscope Racing.
Yeah, so it was the IMSA series then, and then you also had the Trans Am series. Which was one of your favorite drivers, Rich Sloma.
I knew you were going to bring up Rich Sloma.
The famous Corvette. I think it was a fluorescent green color. But yeah, it was a great days to enjoy the track there.
And some fun things to do in Carmel, right?
Yeah,
in the city.
It was great going to the Hog's Breath with Clint Eastwood. He'd be there quite a few times. You'd be in there sitting at the bar, and you'd look over, and there he is right next to you. And really nice man. He was very personable and wasn't stuck up at all. He was just a really cool guy. And he just treated you like a friend. But yeah, I think we were very fortunate to experience that track and the town in the glory days.
Yeah, I agree. So. And it's funny. It's kind of the epicenter of the automotive world because they do the Pebble Beach, but it's a different level. Now you got to spend $2,000, to buy a ticket, to drink wine. I don't know. It feels different than the old glory days of the. IMSA was also known at the time as the International Marijuana Smugglers Association because almost everyone in the series was a drug dealer.
Yeah.
But, Chris, a couple of those cars that Pete mentioned, the BMW that was a 1975 championship car, I mean, that car's got to be worth $6 million at this point, wouldn't you say?
Oh, easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Also, you mentioned John Paul Sr. John Paul Sr. was an infamous race car driver that was also a drug dealer, and he had this crazy Greenwood Corvette. There was only 2 of them made, and John Greenwood was the man back in the day. And there's the car's for sale right now at canepa.com, and it's canepa.com. They don't have a listing price, and you know what that means, Chris?
That means it's in the millions.
Yeah, if you have to ask, it's too much. But some other ways to make money on cars, and for those of you who are new to the Speed Travelers, Chris and I and my brother Ralph, who owns Hollywood Show Cars, we've bought and sold probably 100 cars over our lives, and we've definitely lost on a lot of those purchases, but we definitely got a lot smarter as we got older. and we're trying to share that information with our audience. If you're in the market for an old Corvette or an old Porsche, what advice would you have for people, Chris?
Well, the biggest thing you can do is your due diligence. Research whatever the car is you're looking for, and it doesn't matter what it is. Do the research. There are great resources out there to learn. I mean, in today's climate, there are so many great resources to learn so much specific information about the actual car that you were looking for, the VIN number, and another thing is that the engine block has the same VIN number as the chassis. That increases the value of any car. It's really the most important thing you can do is your due diligence. Lots and lots of research. Just don't go hog wild like we have. You get super excited. Oh my God, it's the car! We find it's like it's a rust bucket, So just be patient. Do the due diligence. Use the resources that are out there. And Charlie, I know you're going to talk to a lot of those. I mean, look, Craigslist is one of those. But there's so much more than that. Look at Facebook. As a matter of fact, there's so many groups on Facebook for the car you're looking for, whether it's Porsche, BMW, Volkswagen, Yugo, I don't care. There's a group out there for that vehicle on virtually every platform.
Yeah, that's good advice. And that's what we like to share with people is that if you're in the market for a classic car, or even an exotic car, don't just go to a dealer and pay full price. You could certainly do your research on Craigslist. You mentioned Craigslist. If you go to search for cars, there's a pull down menu on the left where it'll say Los Angeles, and you can pull the menu down and it'll say use map, and you could do half of the whole country and type in exactly what you're looking for. And a lot of times it'll come up, and a lot of times you find people that have spent a lot of money to get the car almost there. They're 90% there, and you could buy those cars at huge discounts.
Yeah, you can. And you mentioned, we've been talking about like the Greenwood cars, and these old IMSA cars, and you can find a lot of those. If racing cars is your thing, like Adam Carolla, like all the Paul Newman cars for Adam Carolla, there are great places to look at. There are vintage car associations. You can go to Sports Car Vintage Racing Association and look for classic race cars. I think the website's svra.com, and there's lots of classic vintage race cars on that site. And they actually are, you can find some good deals in there, especially right now, because the market is kind of in this flux with this mandate for all the electric vehicles. People are kind of like, well, I don't know what to do with this thing. And they're kind of getting rid of stuff. So right now for the combustion engine, you're really looking at a nice window to find something very, very interesting that's in good nick and suits a fancy that you might have.
Yeah, and to add to our list, usually we have a specific car. We'll talk about Corvettes and how much you should pay and all that. But today it's more general because we're on the racing subject. But Riverside Raceway, do you remember back in the day they had off-road races? I know, Pete, you took us to a few of them. And they had off-road races there. And that's a place where you could make some money because the vintage off-road cars, you could find cars that were driven by Parnelli Jones or some of the old race car drivers, and people haven't really gotten hip to that yet. So places to make some money. One source we like is barnfinds.com. We never talk about Barn Finds, Chris, but it's a great resource.
It is a fantastic resource. And, it's different than Bring a Trailer. It's kind of, Barn Finds is kind of still hanging on to the platform that Bring a Trailer started on. Originally, Bring a Trailer was exactly that. You had to bring a trailer to get the car that you want, to get the car you're bidding on. Barn Finds, you see a lot more of that. You see these true cars coming out of barns and people putting them on auction sites. And Barn Finds is a great one. I mean, there's really cool stuff to be had on there. And I was looking at it the other day, and there is some of that off-road racing history on Barn Finds today.
Yeah, no, I agree. Great source. So that bell you heard in the back means the cookies are done, Chris, and it's time to take our last break. But we are going to come right back here on the Speed Traveler Roadshow. I'm Charlie Frank, joined by Chris Evertsen and Kelly Frank, and the rest of the family today. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to preview the Formula One race in Abu Dhabi. All right, this is the Speed Traveler Roadshow, and we are coming back, and we are on KHTS Radio, AM 1220, or if you're in the Santa Clarita area. Also, you could catch all of our old episodes. Each week we pick a featured marque So if you're in the market for a Porsche or a BMW, you can go to YouTube and go to the Speed Traveler. You can find all of our old episodes and get some good insight on buying one of those cars. Also, Christopher, we are available on all of the platforms for podcasts.
Christopher, wow.
I know. I was even surprised by that one. Christopher, what?
For those of you who don't know, I've known Chris for a long time. And it's actually pretty funny. It's Thanksgiving weekend. I'm joined in the studio by Kelly Frank and my nephew Matt and my brother-in-law Pete. We've all known each other a long time. But I've known Chris since... I think kindergarten, right, Chris? And, you know, we've gone racing together. For those of you who don't know us and know our past, we've gone racing together for 35 odd years. We've done some stunt driving for the movies, and we're current race car drivers, and we teach race car driving. So lots of fun.
Yeah, loads of fun. And, you know, speaking of race car driving, we've got the Las Vegas Grand Prix that just took place last weekend, and then the final race of the season coming up this weekend, where Max Verstappen will be officially crowned Formula One World Champion again.
Right.
But, you know, before we get into previewing the upcoming race, I feel like there's a little bit that needs to be, a little more that needs to be talked about with Las Vegas, purely from a driver's standpoint.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was a crazy. I mean, Max Verstappen came into the weekend hating the event and blah blah blah, and then he ends up winning the race. And then I don't know if you noticed on the victory podium, he was like, "Yeah, it wasn't so bad after all."
You know what's even funnier is he ended up leaving in an Elvis costume. So
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm glad you brought that up, Kelly, because I mean he hated it, yet he went full regalia. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Las Vegas more than an Elvis Presley, you know, early '70s Elvis Presley jumpsuit.
Yeah, and I know we trashed the event itself. I mean, they definitely made a lot of rookie mistakes on the fan experience, but the racing, Chris, was really good.
Well, yeah, it was. The track proved to be a lot more challenging and interesting than I think any of the drivers expected. And we saw a lot of surprises. I mean, let's jump back to qualifying and look what Williams did, and look what American driver Logan Sargent did.
Oh, that was really amazing. If you didn't catch it, I think it was his first appearance in qualifying 3. And
yeah, Q3.
Yeah, and he made it to, originally it was 7th place, but then I forget who got put back. Oh, it was
Carlos Sainz.
Carlos Sainz.
You know, he got charged for the manhole cover.
Yeah, right. So he paid the manhole cover. Oh my God, the Ferrari team boss, by the way, was so mad. Fred, AKA he's known as Fred around the paddock, and he was so mad. If you heard the interview, he was like, "The track was crap. We lost over $1 million tonight." But yeah, so a good job in pointing out Logan Sargent, Chris, because he did a great job, and his teammate at Williams, Albon, I believe they started 5th and 6th. What a qualifying for them.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic job by them, you know, in qualifying, and then in the race, you know, it was crazy. I mean, guys like Lance Stroll. I mean, a lot of people rip on Lance Stroll as a driver. I like him. I think he's patient. I think he's conscientious. I think sometimes maybe he's almost too polite and gets out of the way and then tries to make up for it, then does something silly. But man, coming from the back of the grid, I think he moved up like 19 places up into 5th place, I think it was.
Yeah, Lance Stroll.
Just an incredible job by Lance Stroll with the Aston Martin, moving up that many places to get 5th place in the race. And then also in 4th place, Esteban Ocon for the Alpine F1 team, you know, moving up, I think, 16 places.
Yeah.
It's crazy, or just a ton of places. It's just a great drive by him. And Carlos Sainz, again, he had to work from P12 and worked his way up to P6 in the race. So, I mean, a lot of really good battling throughout the race. Unfortunately, you know, the McLarens had a bit of an issue with Lando Norris's car, and I don't know if something broke or if he just had a snap spin, but he had a pretty big off.
Oh yeah,
in the middle
it was
of
bad.
that race.
He was taken to the hospital after he got out of the car. Said he was fine, and then apparently he wasn't fine. Went to the hospital. They checked him out, but they sent him home around 4 a.m. And so it looks like he's good to go for this upcoming race. And Matt, I saw you shaking your head. Any big storylines you wanted to add quickly before we move on?
Oh no, I mean, I actually was just cracking up on just when Max got the 5-second penalty,
Right?
And then when when they went over the radio and told him like, oh, you got your 5-second penalty, and he goes, oh yeah, send him my best regards. So I thought that was absolutely hilarious.
At the end of the day, he's so dominant right now. It didn't matter. At the end of the day, he still came back and won the race.
And I don't see how that is not penalties on both drivers, or that was a weird situation with Max, and quite frankly, it should have been I think a bigger penalty, really.
Yeah, I think it was, but at least both cars were able to continue. But yeah, so Vegas.
Well, not George Russell so much.
That's true. Vegas was they pulled it out in the end. There's going to be a year 2 and 3 at least, so I think they'll get it together.
They will. I mean, if they don't, they really will have really blown the pooch. If they don't learn an absolute ton on what happened in this race and apply that to next year, I will be very, very disappointed with F1 as a series and with the race promoters. But the racing on track, the nightlife, it was electric. I mean, it's the city of electricity, not electric vehicles, but just light. I mean,
yeah.
the Sphere, what an unbelievable facility.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of the drivers. Many of them stayed at the win, and Kelly.
Oh yeah, we staked out. We were waiting. I mean, we waited for 2 hours. We saw Daniel Ricciardo, and actually it was really funny because we didn't try for this one, but we ended up seeing Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah.
He was just outside waiting alone for his car.
Yeah, right, just chilling by himself.
Walked past him.
You sure he wasn't waiting for his bicycle?
Oh, yeah, he actually ended up walking through the win with his bicycle.
Yeah, he was the smart one. He used his bike to get to the front door. But quickly, Chris, the last race of the year coming up this weekend. It's the Yas Marina circuit at Abu Dhabi. 16 turns. They do it in the evening, actually, as the sun sets. It goes into night. What do you think?
You know what? The drivers should be ready for this, having just competed in Las Vegas. I know it's a short transfer, 1 week away, but I think it's going to be exciting. And quite frankly, I am looking forward to the same kinds of surprises that we saw in Las Vegas at Abu Dhabi. I mean, there's a big championship battle going on for basically fourth place in the standings, and it's crazy, and there's a lot of drivers and teams that are going to be battling for positions. I mean, Williams needs to get points. Some of the other teams really need to get some points, but that battle for fourth place in the championship is pretty tight. I mean, the top three are pretty much locked in. Max Verstappen's going to get the series championship. Sergio Perez and the other second Red Bull is going to be second. I think Lewis Hamilton has firmly planted in, jazz player Lewis Armstrong.
I see trees of green, red roses too.
Pretty much got third place locked in, but the fourth place, I mean, Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso locked in at 200 apiece, Lando Norris with 195, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari was 188. Any one of those drivers could be fourth place. And make no mistake, it's an important fourth place.
All right, we got about 1 minute left. Kelly, you have a pick for this weekend's race, the Yas Marina circuit?
You know what? I love Leclerc. I'm going to go with Leclerc.
Leclerc, Matthew?
Verstappen.
Pete?
Verstappen.
I can't do Verstappen. I think I've picked Lando 3 weeks in a row and lost, so I'm going to go Sergio. Ryan's also here. Ryan, do you have a pick for this weekend?
Verstappen.
Oh, we got another Verstappen. And Chris.
So I'm going to go off the beaten path. I'm going to go with Lance Stroll on the podium.
All right.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
That. All right. This has been the Speed Traveler Roadshow, where we talk classic cars, making money on cars, and a lot of F1. We are going to be back next week, and you have been listening to us on KHTS Radio, 1220 a.m.
Cookies are done.
Cookies are done. We'll see everyone next week.